Alright, so let's get into the procedure now. Four Columbia General Studies students, two males and two females, making up one team. Alright, so four teams were made to collect data for 103 trials, and each of the team consisted of four Columbia General Studies students. Uh, there were two males and two females. One of the males was the victim, and the other male was the model, and the two females were the observers who were used to collect the data for the research. They did not really control for the location of the car. They usually boarded the train using different doors on each trial, and the location of the experimental car varied from um, trial to trial. The male model and the victim remained standing as the train, for the first 70 seconds of the ride, and the female observers took places outside the critical area to remain as to try to not make people as suspicious as possible, try not to elicit demand characteristics so that people would not be like behaving in a way that was socially desirable, right? If someone got to know, okay, this is a research being conducted on helping behavior, they would be much more likely to help. So that would obscure the validity of the study. All right. So our four of our victims, keep in mind that three of them were white and one of them was black, which is why the researchers do tell us that it can be that it can be because any differences in the helping behavior to the black person can be due to his own individual characteristics rather than the fact that he's black, right? Because we are just using one black victim, so it's not really, it can't be really generalizable to the general population, right? So the researchers do note that, and we can definitely include this in the generalizability part of the evaluation of this research. So, before the train departed, the victim stood next to the pole in the critical area, and 70 seconds after the departure, he staggered forward and then collapsed. He would remain supine to the floor and looking at the ceiling until he received help that was standardized across all trials. And then, if no one came to his help, the the entire trial, then the model would help him to his feet, and then he would pick him up, and then they would remain seated for the rest of the trial before the train came to a stop. There were 6 to 8 trials conducted per day, which were always in the same victim condition, which means that if on a day they are conducting cane trials, they will only be cane trials. There will no be drunk trials, but it did vary across the days, but not in the same day. They definitely controlled for the victims' dressings. All of our victims were wearing Eisenhower jackets, old slacks, and no tie. But the only difference was that on 38 of the trials, when the victim played the drunk victim, he smelled of liquor and carried a liquor bottle wrapped tightly around in his brown bag. And on the rest of the 70 no 65 trials, he carried a black cane in his hand, and he appeared completely sober. That was the only difference. And the ages of our victim varied from 26 to 35, which is not that significant. So we can definitely also include this in generalizability, that, oh no, validity, that um, any any difference in the helping by the participants might not be due to the age of the victim rather than the fact that they're drunk or they have a cane in their hand. All right, so let's get to the model condition. Our third aim of the study, which was about the behavior of the model. The behavior of the model consists of two things. Firstly, whether the model was helped early or late. Secondly, whether the model was standing in the critical area or the adjacent area. We looked into the difference in the area because we wanted to see whether the difference in the area in which the model is standing is a cause in the difference in the helping behavior or not. Does 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 that make a difference or not? And we wanted to see, okay, whether if a person comes early to help, whether other people will be much more likely to help because one person helps early and he helps first, right? So we are looking into the Good Samaritans Act, right? So the early and the late was standardized through fourth and the sixth station. In the early condition, the model would help the victim after the fourth station had passed, and in the third and in the late condition, the model would help the victim after the sixth station had passed. So that's how it was operationalized in this study. All right, so our four men, the models were also all males, so their ages range from 24 to 29. So we can also say that their age might not have played a factor in people assisting more, because one reason that people might even assist is that um, they might be trying to assist the person who was helping first rather than the victim themselves, right? Because sometimes a person might be trying to help, but they might be not that resourceful to help, and seeing that, other ordinary people might come to the person who is helping rather than the victim himself, right? So we can also mention that in the validity part of the study, right? So keeping all of that in mind, four model conditions were made. First was the model would stand in the critical area and would wait until the fourth station passed to help the victim. And in the second condition, the model would stand in the critical area, but he would wait until the sixth station had passed to help the victim. This was considered as a late condition. He came late to his assistance. And our third condition consists of model standing in that adjacent area and waiting until the fourth station had passed to help the victim. And the fourth condition consisted of our model standing in the adjacent area and waiting until passing the sixth station. You might be wondering that were there any no model trials? Yes, there definitely were. We were also looking into whether if there's no model, what people would still be likely to help or not, right? So there were equally no model trials as well. Okay, so let's get into the measures of data collection. Keep in mind that we have two female observers, but they could not check for inter-observer reliability because they were observing different things. So we can definitely mention this in the reliability part of the evaluation of our study, that both of these observers could not check for the inter-observer reliability, as they were observing completely different things in the research, as you can see here and here. The observer 1 looked at the race, sex, location of every art in the critical area. However, observer 2 looked at the race, sex, and location of every helper in the adjacent area. Observer 1 counted the total number of individuals in the car, and observer 2 um, counted the latency of the first helper's arrival after the model had fallen and after the victim had fallen and after the model had arrived. What does that mean? I think I mentioned this in my earlier videos, that this latency means that latency refers to delay, the amount of seconds that a person takes to help someone in the context of this study. Of so on not on the on appropriate trials when there was no model, on no model trials, we counted the latency of the first helper's behavior after the victim had fallen, and on model trials where a model was present, we counted the number of seconds that the person took after the model came to the victim's assistance first, right? And the observer one also recorded the number of individuals who came to the victim's assistant, and she also recorded the race, sex, and the location of every helper in the subway car. And however, this point right here recorded and tried to elicit comments from nearby sitting passengers. This was something that was done by both the observers, as they were sitting right next to people. They tried to elicit comments, like tried to get any qualitative data that could explain why the victim is behaving the way, why the participants are behaving the way they are behaving, right? Why are they helping or not helping? And our female observers tried to elicit comments from mostly female participants. In this study, as we get on to the results, we will see that most of the people who helped were males, right? So they collected a good amount of qualitative data as to why not females were helping. Some of the females said that I'm not strong enough, I never saw this kind of thing before, you feel so bad, you don't know what to do, I don't know where to look. And she didn't consider herself to be as strong enough to help the person, and considered that to be a man's job to help, right? So we can also say that this research collected qualitative data as well as quantitative data. All right, so there was a problem faced on the fourth day of the study. What happened was that we can definitely note that there were more cane trials in general rather than drunk trials, right? There were 65 trials for the cane condition and only 38 trials for the drunk condition. We know that already. But the researchers also tell us that they were unevenly distributed across our white victims and our black victim. Why is that? On the first day of the study, the team 1 and 2, which consisted of both our white victims, started in the gain condition. And on the same day, our team 3 and 4, one of the teams, team 3 consisted of a black victim, however, team 4 consisted of a white victim. Both of these teams started in the drunk condition, and they were told to alternate their days in the condition across the days. So there were different conditions across the days. So if on one day they're doing cane, the next day they're gonna do drunk. That's how they were instructed to follow. But what happened is that our team 2, on the fourth day of the study, when they were supposed to run drunk trials, they ran cane trials instead of drunk trials because they um, they did not like playing drunk, which is why how it was unevenly distributed, it ended up in our black victim playing more drunk trials than cane trials. Our white victims played more cane trials, but our black victim played more drunk trials. So that was unevenly distributed across the study. So we can also say that the fact that our black victim played more drunk trial lowers the credibility of this study, because it so because that if same race helping is also likely to occur, we can just blame it on the fact that he's black and he's drunk as well. We don't know if the only aspect of being black causes same race helping or not. So that is not clear in this study. Field experiments usually do have a lot of problems with standardization and um, and in the procedure. So that was the problem they faced in this study. So keep in mind while we move on to our results.